Okay. A very strange time this is with really horrendous things like we're seeing in Israel now and Ukraine and the excess deaths in our own country and injuries. And then at the same time too, because of the work we do, we get to meet people we would have never met. And Dr. Paul Oosterhuis and I were granted a interview with Dr. Chris Martenson. And so I'm going to play it. It would have gone on longer than it did. It goes for about an hour and a half. The only reason we called it short is my mother is in hospital, and I got these texts from family members saying, call me ASAP, ASAP. I thought something happened to her. And so when I did call her up, or my dad up, thinking we're going to get dreadful news, I had my mum going, I just want to tell you I'm okay. So if you wonder why the interview was cut short, that's because we did have a few other issues, like I had a tractor passing me, and I was on the nature strip outside somewhere where they were going to do some work on my bus. So please accept my apologies for my studio and lighting on my side. But the show is really about these two giants, Dr. Paul Oosterhuis and Dr. Chris Martenson. So here we go.
Hi, everybody. So I'm just pressing record. I'll be quiet for a while to let these two giants speak. And then if my Starlink kicks in, I'll join in. But it's amazing that you're here, Chris. It's incredible. I should call you doctor. I work with Dr. Paul on Monday nights. Dr. Paul is a giant in Australia when it comes to standing up against everything that's going on. So, but it's an honor to have you on. And I'm just going to sit back and let you two chat.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Michael. Paul, we're Dr. Paul. Where should we start on this whole thing? We were just talking before the recording started that we just had our honey badger gathering, which is a yearly thing here up on my farm. And people come in from all over, and a couple came in from Sydney, and they had other reasons to be in the US, but they came to be part of this. It was a wonderful gathering, and in my conversations with them, they were self-reporting that it's still kind of lonely for people who think critically and openly in Australia, and maybe understand maybe what happened with the whole vaccine issue and all of that. So just that just wanted to let you know that's all I know at this point, besides what I read in the newspapers. But who can trust any of that? Right?
No, don't trust any of it. I mean, Sydney's a funny case. I actually know more people around since COVID, from people in Victoria like Michael, because they were hammered so hard. They were living in Danistan, which is a totalitarian COVID state. And I was drawn to there. So I would be doing these trips down to join the marches and things. And the people in Sydney, I don't know what it is. They are less engaged. We are starting to get more freedom groups and better attendances. But maybe we just didn't suffer enough. Maybe we needed a proper tyrant like, I thought Brad
Dan Andrews.
Yeah. And now look, Dan has fallen on his sword. Jacinta Ahern has fallen on. They want us to memory hole the whole COVID thing, the last 3.5 years, and we refuse to let it be memory hole.
Well, is it? What do you do with all the excess deaths?
That's
right.
Is
the excess deaths still making any headway there? Headlines there, or
it has popped up. I mean, there have been front page and newspaper recognitions but of course they never attributed to its real cause. That's where my 2 years ago on my Substack, I said, and then watched every form of coincidence that they could think. That's still going on, and I don't know that will change, but it is coming out. You know, the common knowledge game, as you put it, I think is one. Even the Branch Covidian cultists seem to be losing faith in their, in their religion, their article of faith and their ritual of membership hasn't lived up to its promises. And I was watching Denis Rancourt, the Canadian PhD, talking to the Doctors for COVID Ethics, who I've been working with from the very beginning. And, that lens of all-cause mortality is important, because it was one of the last things that they couldn't fudge, at least not easily. They do. I mean, you look at people like a fellow in, but there's a John Baudouin.
Oh yeah, Coquin de Chien, John Bowden. Yeah,
that's him. You know, they're showing how they play with the death certificates and the actual death numbers. So I'm not saying they can't game and that they're not gaming the numbers, especially with respect to death certifications. And one of the things that we've been involved with here, well, we're involved with all sorts of things, but the lawfare, you can see that hit me very early in 2021, when I was basically I was listening to Pierre Corey and Paul Merrick. This was during the time of Delta. They were seeing breakthroughs with their protocol and needing to increase the dose of ivermectin. And they were saying, you need to have this stuff in your house, in your cabinet. You need to take it straight away. And I realized early treatment was, not only did hydroxy work, that quercetin worked, which is your blueberries that you mentioned in your alert in early 2020, along with zinc and vitamin D. I mean, everything you said was, actionable and useful. And maybe that's my hope for this interview, because one thing that's unique, I think, about your framing and what you've been doing is, you revealed the whole shit show in all its complexity, and yes, that has produced some anxiety in me over the years. But what I learned was, if I took a bit of action, whatever it was, let's buy a battery, let's put solar panels on the roof. Congrats on your solar panels coming. I've solar panels, batteries, rainwater tank, just buy some silver, just bit by bit over the years. And that's how I found that empowered me, both mentally and so you reveal the whole shit show in wonderful framing, but I think what's unique about you is that you've got this optimism that somehow shines through everything, and the reason I want people to hear your framing is because it's so empowering. People they need to know what they can do. They can see the war going all now, literally the war going on all around them. But I feel we've been at war since early 2020.
Yeah, Israel is a bit like Eurasia out of 1984. Now we're in war with Eurasia. You know what I mean? And it's so clear. The other question before we go there, Doctor, is can we just have some context? Was there a moment in time where you suddenly went, okay, there's something odd going on here, because that we all looked at it from different perspectives. I was in the theatre world as a playwright, so I'm looking that way. Dr. Paul is right there in the thick of it, and he can see it where others around him aren't. where were you when, if you can remember, where you thought, okay, this doesn't make sense, and that you had to do something about it?
Yeah. Well, Michael, good question. How far back am I allowed to rewind the clock? Because you're basically asking my origin story, and
Yeah,
and
that's
when
right.
did I get red pilled?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So slow process. I like to say I'm a quick learner eventually. It took me forever to sort of catch on, but I've been doing this a long time. So my first wake up call was I'm fully ensconced in the matrix at this point in time, right? I'm vice president of a company. I've got a PhD, an MBA. I got a house on the water. I've got a boat with twin engines, the whole 9 yards, right? I'm like I'm like beyond my eyebrows sunk in this quicksand, right? Living the dream. And then somebody at one point said, Chris, you're a smart guy. Can you look at this for me? And they handed me a thing about building 7 on 9/11, right? And this is back in 2002, maybe. Yeah, a year after, maybe 2 years after. I forget. It's back there somewhere. And I said, yeah, sure. And I'm just totally ready to like tear this thing apart. And that was my first like scratchy record moment. Like, I'm like, I couldn't make sense of this, So I'm a curious guy. I started digging on that. And at the same time, of course, we had just come through like the stock market bubble of 2000, right? And I'd done everything I was supposed to. I'm a genius like everybody. I had this portfolio. I'm in all these .com turned .bomb companies. That blew up, and so I just got curious. And then the thing that tore the cover off for me, this was like getting somebody tearing the covers off at 2 a.m. and throwing water on you, was a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island by a man named G. Edward Griffin, which explains how the Federal Reserve came to be, right? And it's a big, thick book, and it explains how money works. And I didn't know that. And I'm like, this can't be true, but I went out and I investigated. The whole book's true. And it's very simple to understand, but I was like, wow, this is weird. I made it all the way through an MBA program. They taught me how to compete for money, but not how the system of money actually worked. That's kind of a weird thing. Like, we're going to put you in an arena and you have to play, but we're not going to tell you anything about what the purpose of the arena is. It's a weird thing. So when I started investigating that, one thing led to another, and I suddenly had come across too many things that just didn't add up anymore. So this is 2003, 4. By 2005, it had gotten so bad I couldn't do my job anymore. I was just useless there. I exited the corporate world and I started a blog. So, if you ever want career advice, don't ask me. I'm like, it's not a bad idea, right? So, but I started this blog because I had to tell people about this thing that was sort of turning into a larger story. And I investigated the system of money enough to understand it. And then I investigated the world of resources, which is, things like oil and lithium and water and soil, to say, oh, we have a problem here. And then my nickname as a boy was Nature Boy. Like if you came to my house anywhere between the age of like 6 to 15 when I left home finally, if you wanted to know, said, Chris, I want to see a hognose snake. I want to see a large toad. I wouldn't just go out and look for one. I could show you specific ones. Like I knew where they all were, right? I was really tapped into nature. I loved fishing. I loved catching things. I loved noticing things. But by the time I started to wake up, I was old enough, I'm in my 40s at that point. I realized the whole world had changed, right? Here was one of my wake-up calls. It really said, I have to do something, When did I notice? Was 2002. 2005 was when I was like, geez, I have to do something about this. And this, in this case, was turtles. I love turtles. If I'm driving along and I see a turtle in the road, I stop and I move it in the same direction it's facing because they always end up going that way anyway. And that's what I did. And I realized somewhere in around 2005, I hadn't stopped for a turtle in about 5 years. Not because there weren't, I didn't care anymore. I just hadn't seen one. And it suddenly dawned on me. I was like, where are they? They're missing 65 million years. They've been in this region and now they're not here. Wood turtles, box turtles, sliders, all gone. Right. And so when I added that up, I was like, wow, if I'm going to do something about this, well, what's the core problem, right? Because if you go out and try and make turtle sanctuaries, nothing happens, right? You save a little thing and then a golf course gets built on it anyway later, right? So nothing happens. I didn't want to be one of those people fighting rear guard action. Let's fight this pipeline. Yay, we won. 10 more got built, right? None of that. It's like, what's the issue? And the issue I discovered was that our way, our human way of doing the economy is we just want to constantly grow it. It sounds good. Well, yeah, let's have a growing economy, more jobs, more houses, more roads, more everything. The problem with that model, once you scratch at it, is like, oh, it's got an expiration date on it. It runs out of stuff, turtles eventually, but it runs out of other things as well. And it was very obvious to me that we had a big, giant, huge math problem on our hands, which is we have all this money, all this debt being created, all this inflation is going to get created. We're going to just chew through more and more and more stuff, everything, oil, coal, lithium, all of it. And we're going to get to the end of that story and we're going to have some regrets because we're going to have like destroyed big, huge swaths of this incredibly beautiful, amazing thing we call nature. And we were going to have lost species beyond critical thresholds, which is, oops, no backsies. It was really like, it felt like a giant tragedy was gearing up, but I had grief in my heart because I love all the things outside. It's a better world with giant fish and turtles and toads in it, So that was really my impetus. Like, I got to do something. And I investigated the whole scene long enough, Paul and Michael, to discover that if you take the system on directly, it will wreck you. It will just chew you up and spit you out. So I thought, okay, I've been through some strategy classes. What would be the right way? So I realized early on that this was actually a fight for ideas. It wasn't a fight of information. And it wasn't a fight of, can we present a better, something to somebody? It was ideas. So the idea that I chose to organize around from 2008 through to 2020, when I had to shift on to COVID, was the idea that infinite exponential growth on a finite planet is a bad idea. That's it. It doesn't say bankers are bad, but it kind of comes at them like a torpedo and says, hey, your whole model is broken. And even bankers can't disagree with it. So it's kind of like, instead of taking it on directly, I'm going to dismantle the banking system. I came at it with ideas. And I would love to believe I was smart enough to know what I was doing. But the older I get, the more I realize that this whole thing comes down to what narratives are humans operating from, and what are the metaphors that underpin those? Because if you have those in place, everything changes, right? That's the fulcrum. That's the lever point. And that's what we're watching now, not to get, make a long story too endless, but that's what's happening right now. And people say, oh, it's hyperbole to say we're at war. No, we're at war. There's just, the wars are ideas right now. And so that's really where I'm organizing a lot of my focus now. Paul called it framing. I call it framing. I love reframing things because the power is in the idea. It's not in the data itself, but the ideas there's an art and a science to how you pitch an idea in the right way. And so that's kind of what I'm focusing on at this point.
Yes, and we're working on ideas too. We have novel ideas like informed consent is actually a law, and it is a right, and that it's being breached. That coercion shouldn't be part of our medical environment. That free speech is essential for the functioning of science and the democracy, and that we haven't had that. And I think we've all experienced just the density of the censorship, that we've been facing the last 3 years. It's incredible, but people don't know because they never saw the tweet, they never saw the Facebook post. There's some of the information that I've been talking about for over 2 years is just like it's starting to come out. A big one, which is not particularly recent, is the Kevin McKernan finding DNA in the ampules. People are starting to, and that's a clear-cut gene therapy. I remember when I wrote gene therapy, when I said it to the medical board in 2021, look, I said, you've got something called a vaccine, which is actually an undisclosed gene therapy, which hasn't been tested, which hasn't got long-term safety data. And I have real concerns about you mandating as something which has no long-term safety data, where there are signals of harm, in an environment where you don't have a free discourse, you don't have informed consent, you don't have the free exchange of ideas. In fact, you're attacking my free speech, and you're using the regulators, the medical regulators, to prevent informed consent and free speech. So I know we don't want to talk just about COVID, but that was the fall of the West in many ways for me. Like we've got two different worlds. We have the world pre-COVID and the world and so I saw myself acting like you. I saw it as a war already, but just not the sort of war that people imagined was coming. Everyone fought, you know.
Can I just ask you, Dr. Chris, can I just ask you just to clarify? So what I've seen, so I've been on the road for like 2 years since a massive gathering in Canberra where people came from all over Australia basically to defend humanity, to say we want freedom. So you're saying a culture can be built on metaphors. That's the actual underlying foundation of a culture. Mm-hmm. And what COVID has done is come along and disproved all those metaphors. So the Western world, or at least Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, Ireland, have lost their identity, which means it's up for grabs now. And the victory is the one that can establish metaphors that the majority will go, okay, that's who we are now. And that's sort of what we're fighting for. The no man's land is, who are we and who do we want to be? Because at the moment, people are utterly lost. You know, we're having drag queens teaching our children. We have our fathers are from a generation who lied to go to war, about their age. And now we have men lying that they're women in order to compete in women's sports. We're all confused and lost. And I'm just wondering if that's what you mean. That's the actual war, is for our identity.
It's exactly what I mean. And to connect what both of you are saying is so here's the war as I see it. And G. Edward Griffin, again, framed this like 30 years ago. He saw this coming way before anybody. And whether we call it capitalism or communism or authoritarianism versus this, versus at heart, it's collectivists. Those are people who all believe that we derive our meaning and purpose as a piece, like a cell in a body of it's collectivist, right? So that's what they believe in. They believe that you have to have your fealty to that collective organism, and if the organism's doing well, then that's where you get your meaning from. You just sort of slot in. And then there are the other big ideas like no. We're a bunch of individuals, and the organism itself, the collection of us, is more powerful because we are each sovereign individual, free, critical thinking people, right? And roughly speaking, that's capitalism that I just described, and the one before that is communism, right? To use an ism, they're not quite right for our current landscape, but there we are, close enough. So I'm a big believer in this idea, which is that if you arm people with the right information in the right context, and they've got the right narrative in play, they have some underlying metaphor that drives them, they will do the most amazing things you've ever seen, right? All I have to do is look at history. Somehow they got the pyramids built, and somehow they had the temple at Angnat with its 1.5 kilometer, reflecting pool, 1.5 million cubic meters of dirt moved with sticks and baskets. Like, it's just crazy what people will do when they're motivated. The temple at Newgrange, 200,000 tons of stone moved, 1000 BC. I mean, it's just crazy, right? So I believe that humans, when given the appropriate context, do amazing things. The collectivists don't believe that. They're top down. We have to control everybody. We have to control what they think, what they say, what they do, when they do it, how they do it, punish people acutely when they stray out of the line, because it makes us all a little nervous that they're not hewing to this thing. Remember, it was Jacinda Ardern in the context of climate change, basically said in front of the UN, she said, hey, look, until everybody believes in climate change, we can't make any progress. We have to have this purity of adherence before we can begin to even hope for progress, which is a terribly broken idea, because if your alternative energy programs were that delicious, just do them and they'll win, and people will just flock to them because it's just, better, more abundant, cheaper, more stable, energy. None of that's actually true, but which is why they feel like they have to force everything. So, core metaphor: are we a part of a whole, or is the whole a part of each little piece? Like that's the core fundamental argument that's being had right now. And for whatever reason, the whole West, by which I include all the countries you named, including most of Europe, have decided that we're going to go down this collectivist path, which has been done many times in history. We ought to have a full-throated argument about it, because we've done it, whether we call it socialism or communism. It's happened, and the number of times it's happened happily without ending in mass atrocity is low. I think, what do we got? Like Norway, that's a little socialism, maybe some Iceland, but these are like energy rich countries with tons of resources. It just doesn't work in a world of diminishing resources. And so that's where we're at. And it's literally that narrative shift, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to change that.
Mickey Willis's movie, the documentary, was very good framing for that. And he had G. Edward Griffin on. And I remember reading The Creature from Jekyll Island a few years ago, and it's a great book. It reads like a science, like a espionage movie, because these guys over 100 years ago were planning this in secret. The most powerful, the most rich, how they would take over the world effectively, and it's going very well up to now. But that's, like you say, it's because people have been blind to things like where money comes from, and this dominant paradigm of economic growth is all that we need. And it doesn't matter if that's new cancer cases or pollution. If it generates, it's all good in terms of GDP. It doesn't matter how dystopian the world comes. So this infinite growth on a finite planet, it's one of your taglines, and it's a core one, because it's wrong. It's demonstrably wrong. And I remember over 10 years ago, you were talking about this, and I did some of the maths myself, and I saw the two different exponential curves: income, which is what you need to pay off debt, and debt itself going at twice the rate. And you could see very quickly that you have two exponential curves, but one is just going to take away. It's just going to take off at some point. The banks are not going to lend, and it's going to become unrepayable, and it's going to implode on itself. And I believe this is the time we're in now, that we've had our social contract torn apart, but where I could see it most clearly early on is in the money system. When I was born, the Aussie and the US dollar, the Aussie dollar was worth more than the US dollar when I was born, by the way. $1 was worth about a gram of gold, 1,000 milligrams. And now we're at 10. It's 19
milligrams.
10 milligrams, yeah. We've lost 99% of the value of what we still call a dollar. And we're still calling a dollar, treating it the same. But we're now struggling over the last percent of purchasing power. And I think things are going to get very, very, when you get close to asymptotes, like you bit on exponential growth, everything happens. It's so counterintuitive. If people understood exponential functions, it would make life, they would understand what's going on and how things are going to be moving very quickly now. And I certainly have a feeling we're in a time of quickening. Things are moving fast, and there are so many pieces, and we try to feel our way to what are the solution spaces. First of all, get the message out, because with the COVID thing, I thought, quite naively perhaps, but I thought all people need to know is the information. If they know that vitamin D can save grandma,
Mhm.
Give them vitamin D, give them some zinc, give them some zinc ionophore, your favorite zinc ionophore. You know my blessing. I've got to do the blessing now. In the name of the holy horse paste, the hydroxy, the vitamin D, the zinc, the quercetin, the zinc ionophores, which include the zithromycin and doctor, and the mysterious melatonin. I bless you all. You see, I'm not a doctor anymore. You're a guerrilla gardener. You're running the guerrilla gardening
Yes.
channel, and I'm now like the monk of early treatment, going around, speaking the good word, and that's how I got in trouble. That's how I got in trouble. I just wanted people
Yeah.
to. I thought if they have access to the knowledge, they can make the right. Simply, and I think it's probably true writ large for all the problems. If we understand it, what's going on, we know how to individually do the things we need to do to be resilient. And I know that they've stolen that word from the freedom movement. They call the concentration camps resilience centers in Australia.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
that offended me.
Yeah, and it should.
The other thing too, though. Oh, sorry, Paul. Just finish. Just saying about your truth thing. As we were traveling around, there was no symbols of resistance everywhere, and I put out a call saying we need a symbol that unites us all. Anyone who is concerned about what's going on, for two reasons: one, we can identify each other, and two, a simple symbol could make the other side go, there's a lot of resistance here. I see this symbol everywhere. And what we said is it had to fit on a sticker, a little short sticker, so someone could put it in their pocket like a teenager and stick it everywhere and make people think, wow, there's lots of resistance here. It had to be unique to our movement, and you had to be able to draw it quickly on your neighbour's windscreen if you wanted to piss him off. And we had so many submissions, but the final submission we went with, which is spreading across in Australia now, is 832. And I didn't know what it was when I was told it, but it's because I'm not a big Bible reader, but it's from John, and it's the truth shall set you free or make you free. And so people are getting it. It's spreading across the country. They're getting tattoos, they're getting number plates, and it's a symbol that was saying, we want the truth. We're groping in the dark here. We've got a tsunami of bullshit that we've suddenly stuck in, and we want the truth. But what's really interesting is from Australia, I don't know about America, but we lost the COVID battle. More people got vaccinated than didn't. There's much less, only 4 out of 5 aren't taking the 4th and 5th booster. So we sort of got a bit of a win there. But we've won the science battle because of people like yourself, people like Dr. Paul, all these other great giants that are coming out with the truth. We won the science battle, and which should mean we've got the truth. But the people don't want the truth. And I think herein lies the problem, where you're talking about the metaphors of identity. I think the real problem we're facing is that they don't want the truth. And what do they want? And why don't they want the truth? Does a responsibility come with it? Are we dealing with old tribal stuff, where in these troubled times, the great leader like Dan Andrews has said, we're going this way, and you don't question the leader, because if you do, you're going to have to tackle the lions and tigers by yourself. I think the real problem lies not with the Klaus Schwabs or Big Pharma or this, but with our brothers and sisters that throughout history, through silent compliance, allowed the USSR to get established, allowed China to get established. And the shining light in all this history is America. You guys created the USA. And I know you got all your flaws and stuff like this, but at one point in history, you guys said, no, we're having a free society. We're having a proper democracy. And you're the beacon of hope still, with all your issues, for the rest of us. If you fall, the lights go out all across the world. Every light is just a fake light. And I'm not saying you're perfect, but I'm saying that's how important America is, at least to me, as we're trying to fight for humanity, decency, freedom, liberty. I got a tractor passing me.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So what I'm hearing, so a bit of framing that I love that comes from a guy named John Michael Greer. And he said, let's frame the difference between problems and predicaments. Problems have solutions. Predicaments have outcomes. So if you're facing a problem, go for it, find solutions, elect new people, work hard, you're good to go. But if you try and find solutions to predicaments, well, you're just going to waste your time and not much is going to happen. So we have to know where we're facing predicaments in this story. And we got many of them. So back to what Paul was saying, we collectively, the West, this includes Australia, especially Canada, United States, et cetera. We've been running a situation where our money system has been compounding its debts at roughly twice the rate of the underlying income, which itself is a fiction because some of that is because we spent money. It's kind of like if you earned 100,000 and I earned 100,000, we would have each $100,000 economy. But if next year I still earn 100,000, but you borrowed 100,000 and bought a new motorhome, right? You would have your economy would be twice as big as mine, right? Because of all the extra borrowing and spending. So we've been running this fiction for a long time that we can just keep pulling from the future, which is our children's and grandchildren's futures, right? We've just been borrowing from the future. We know there's hell to pay at some point. And so we need to have that truth, because the most important thing that Paul said is that our social contracts are shredding. COVID shredded that, the medical contract, right? The ethics, all sorts of social contracts got shredded. But the number one social contract we have with each other is our system of money, because it allows me to not know who you are and still have trust, because, you know, your money and my money, we can exchange it and it works, right? But when you have people above you who are debasing that, ruining that, you know, this is why when we were fighting the Revolutionary War over here in the United States, what did Britain do? Well, they started counterfeiting our money, our paper money, because we decided to go for a little while with paper money. It's just easier. It's wartime, right? So they started counterfeiting it and they crashed the value of the currency, because everybody knows that if you really want to wreck a country, you wreck its money. That's the ultimate, you know, shot that takes them down, right? Today, Venezuela, we can see this happening in a variety of places. When your money breaks, everything breaks. So that's what's kind of at risk here. And young people have to know this, because already the money is breaking, right? And they like to break it slow enough that they hope nobody notices the frog boiling in the water. But eventually it gets a little faster, and we're in one of those quickening moments where now people all over the place are going, wow, I can't afford this. You know, you see all these people on TikTok, young kids going, I can't afford rent. I can't afford a house. I'll never get started. I have to delay a family. I can't even, like, my money runs out by the 15th of the month. Whatever the story is, our money system is being broken, and the people who are in charge of it, whose job it is not to break it, aren't being honest with us about that. And they aren't giving us the truth. So we should be 832ing all of this stuff, because, you know, people want to know. And I've found that, you know, not everybody, to be fair, but more and more people have woken up in this past year than in the last 20 that I've sort of been doing whatever this work is. Yeah. So I'm very encouraged by that, and also discouraged that, you know what, not everybody's gonna wake up. But
one of the things that I followed even before COVID is because we've been talking about these truths for quite a while, and you thought, if you just give them the right data, if you give them this is the flaw. At some point, it was clear that it wasn't data sensitive, whatever this delusion or psychosis was. You had to reach them in the heart. You know, like for you were reaching the heart when you were talking about your love of the turtles and the insect disappearance and stuff like that. It's that's what really motivates. You know, it's not money. For me, I realized years ago that I wasn't turning up to work each day in the operating field in the hospital for money. It was so I could provide benefit. You know, I could save the lives, and I got the joy from that. But yes, I had to pay the mortgage and all that. That traps us. But yeah, it's like data and facts didn't seem to work, which is why we rely quite heavily on music, comedy, anything that will reach into people's hearts. And you could say it's love, because it is. I mean, the collectivist idea has been polluted and poisoned and hijacked, but there is a point at which there is a role that what we do benefits the future. You know, this is leaving a world worth inheriting. You know, that's a collectivist framing in a sense. So, but it's best achieved, I think. What you're saying is through individuals doing what's best for them, their communities, their families, locally, and then extending that globally. That's my vision. I don't look to the politicians. I don't look too much to the courts to solve our problems. It's direct marketing, and it's direct not just to the mind, but to the hearts of people who want to see a better world for their children and for the future of mankind. But that's not in conflict with doing what's best for your community, for you as an individual. So, and in the predicament piece, I love Greer, but and I think yes, we are facing predicaments, but I still have faith that the wild card here is the assumptions we make about the future and the technology. I think we need a design revolution, the likes of which Buckminster Fuller was talking about. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what I get excited about, because I think these paradigms, these demonstrably false, they're breaking apart. Klaus and his merry men and women want to impose their solution, and I think we can do a much better job. If you leave it to the inventiveness, get the government and all the red tape and all the because they won't be able to fund their operations of ever-growing government size. There's the state above me in Queensland, more than half the people are employed by the government. Where does
half?
Yeah, so we've already well advanced as a communist state.
Wow. Oh, we are. Yeah, that's the truth, Doctor. We are definitely. Oh, am I muted? We are definitely on the road to. We are definitely on the road to communism. I just wanted to say one more thing, though. I've done about 30,000 k's in this bus in the last since I've had it, and I'm traveling across Australia through the farming communities, everything. I've had to clean the windscreen maybe 3 times, and not just because I'm grotty, I don't mind it. There's no insects. There's no. I've got a few, but when I was my family used to travel when I was young, and we would have to stop. You literally couldn't see out of the windscreen for the insects. And now that's not the case at all. I know it's the same around in Europe and stuff, but I think that's a great cause for concern. I mean, literally nothing, you know. But back to the thing, we definitely are becoming communism, and in it, I find that one of the interesting things, I don't know about America, but over here, where I was at, we were in Melbourne where the police were shooting people on the Shrine of Remembrance. I was there, I witnessed all that. And it was a defining moment where you thought the people would not accept this, but they did. In fact, they were told lies about it that they knew were untrue, and they propagated the lies. We had another thing with this older lady in her 70s who was wearing the Australian flag like a cape, and she was pushed over. One police officer pepper sprayed her, another one pepper sprayed her, and then the rest just walked past and left her. It was utterly unacceptable. It was something that couldn't happen in the Australian media. And we thought that would change everything. It didn't. 2 days later, the police come out with the lie, an absolute lie, that it was a man dressed up, and everyone bought it. And they didn't buy it because they thought it was true. They bought it because they wanted to be on the side of the police in a way that was still acceptable to them. So they're quite comfortable with the hypocrisy and the lies. And the default now in Australia is silence. So with us, the Cafe Lockdown, we defend free speech by recording the voice of anybody who wants to speak freely, unedited. So if you look back in time, not everybody was compliant. There were people all over the country who were willing to stand up, and that's what we're finding. But it's a small percentage. And for some reason now, we have our community selling liberty and freedom, and we have the government selling tyranny. And the good majority of Australians are leaning towards tyranny. And I wonder if you go back in history, like you said about Norway, was there any time anywhere in history, I haven't been able to find it, where tyranny started to rise to set up a totalitarian system, where it was stopped in its tracks by a movement that actually had the courage to stop it? I haven't heard of it. I wonder if you have, and how they did it.
Well, no, I haven't. But let's, if we could. So there's an organizing framework here. I mean, the stuff with the police is certainly very aggravating. It's infuriating, and it's trust me, I can get all worked up about that. But the police are the lowest layer of management in this corporation. Okay, they're there fundamentally to form a line between the capital owners and the riffraff, right? You know, that's sort of like their duty, and they do it well. What I was astonished by, to just widen the lens a tiny bit, was how there was no daylight in the COVID response, the tyranny response, the tyrannical messaging, the methods across literally almost all of Europe, with Sweden as a lone holdout, right? Israel, and New Zealand, Canada, all of North America, forget that, everybody did it. So the power of this really astonished me. And this kind of came into focus for me when I read that paper by Tanaka et al., which showed that virtually every one of the variants was lab created and released, right? So all of a sudden, at a higher level, we're running. This is a much bigger program. This isn't just, Australia and its leadership went a little bats for a while, and so did New Zealand, and so did Canada. There's some human carrier wave of weirdness, and we all just bought into it. This was, I think we have to face up to the idea that there's a program running, right? And now we're all groping in the dark because, we have some names, Klaus Schwab. I don't even know if we know who the names are, but let's take it at face value. One of these organizing principles is, well, the WEF, they came out and they said they would like to do these certain things so they could get a great reset. And there's some things they would like to see. And they've been very upfront about it. They have PowerPoints and a website. They've told us, you'll own nothing. You'll be happy. Western values will be tested to the breaking point. You will not eat meat. You will eat insects grown in a factory somewhere, not live ones from outside, because there aren't any of those, right? On and on. So like where do you fall, like as you grasp around? I mean, we're all groping in the dark here, but do you have a sense of, like, is this an organic thing that just happened because we can understand it just looking through the prism of Australian history? Or do you have a sense that there's some outside force that's involved here too?
There's an outside force, definitely. I think they have a very strong vision, and their vision, the end justifies the means. So I think some people are in on it, a small percentage, like, say, our Premier Dan Andrews or our ex-Premier, and they're committed to it, and sort of a Marxist destruction of the West. I think the rest are debt slaves. They've got so much debt with houses and cars and kids in good schools that they literally already feel that they're not free, and that COVID was just another shackle they put on with all their other shackles. I find is the people like Dr. Paul, who was on a great, he was earning a great wage, he was doing a brilliant job. I would never have met him, because it was just a status thing. It was never have met. But instead, once they leave that to fight for something greater, there's a great purpose fills their souls. So they lose everything they thought would matter. And the fact is, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? In fact, there's great purpose being offered by the freedom movement. What I think we're lacking, though, is a vision that our people go, okay, that's where we're going. That's where we're heading. So here you can either go with Klaus Schwab and go eat some cockroaches in your rags, or you can come with us and we're going to create a world where you matter and you have power, you have liberty, and your children are born with so much truth that they can unfurl their soul's wings and fly to their dreams. And I think if we can articulate a very simple metaphor, like you said, about what we stand for, where we're going, I think we have a chance of basically selling them a better product. Because to now, I think we've been playing catch up with the tyrants. You know, they do things and go, what? Well, that can't be right. You know, where in actual fact, it's now time for us to evaluate where we were, get in front and go, you guys want to go that way, enjoy, but we're going this way and we're going to create a better world, a human
parallel
world.
society, a parallel society, like
Yeah.
like Václav Havel, Power.
Yeah, Václav Havel.
We want, and I think what you're doing with your 832 meetings, it's sort of like a proto. It's the beginnings of this parallel society that we've all known has to be built. And it doesn't need guns and bombs and weapons to win. It just because it's a better way to live, a more prosperous, a more free life. You see, one of the things I enjoyed about medicine was my autonomy to make choices, to make decisions. I would do whatever it took to save the patient in front of me, and I never felt restricted by protocols and administrators. I did what it took, and that's not the world of medicine now. They've taken away autonomy. They've made us like paramedics. I used to laugh at how the paramedics had to follow their strict protocols out on the roadside, but the moment they came to me in the emergency department, I had more tools and I would work the problem. And in a sense, this is what we're doing here now, where it's the same activity, but now it's writ large. We're working multiple problems, trying to work out what are the priorities. And if we build, to the extent that we build a life with more freedom and more real prosperity, where we have purpose, where we can develop mastery and use our unique talents to our full, it's not all Mad Max doom and gloom, you know. I see the potential for great, wonderful things coming from this if we're in a position to grab it. And the destruction of the social contract, the destruction of the financial system, the destruction of sovereign debt will blindside people and impoverish and destroy the middle class. It's going to be difficult, but from that, the ashes of that can emerge this new way of living that will be so much richer, because life as a free human is so much more valuable than as a rat in a cage, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love this because you want to know what my core framing is when I break it all the way down, is that let's just use Klaus Schwab, let's use the WF, the collectivists, whoever they are, put them in a bucket. You know what they are to me? They're a death cult, right? And by which I mean, you know, yes, sometimes they're angling directly for the death of things, but death to me is what happens when there's no growth anymore, right? And so what they're fundamentally asking people to do, all the way at the metaphor linguistic level, right, which is, oh, we're going to have this nonviolent communication. You can't have any microaggressions. You can't say anything that would potentially offend me, which means I'm not going to have my rough edges bumped up against, so they don't grow. They're encased in lucite. I can advance to about the age of 13 and they never develop, right? Or it's more direct, right? Because, you know, if Monsanto wants to make more with Syngenta and Bayer, more of these neonicotinoid pesticides, which are fundamentally collapsing our ecosystem, well, they make money at it. That's fine. You know, oh, Raytheon wants to make a few more, well, you know, that's fine. So as long as you are killing things, they allow you to make money at it like that. But if I'm a farmer and I want to put a swale in to start to capture some water, oh my goodness, I don't know about your country, but over here, Army Corps of Engineers, Department of No from over here, like everybody will weigh in on this thing that you are not allowed to do. But if you're Walmart and you wanted to pave it over, you know, you just throw some money into the environmental fund and you're good to go. So that's the way I look at it now, is that our money has disintermediated us from each other, from the world. And now they're crushing this whole thing down where it's a death cult. And and so people often say, Chris, are you running a cult? And I say, look, good news, bad news. The good news today is that same as the bad news. You just have to decide which cult you belong to these days, right? And so a cult is an organized way of thinking, right? And it's either serving you or it's not serving you. I submit to you, gentlemen, that young people today, who are the normal sources of all revolutionary, activity and energy, that they will let you know that exactly what you said, Michael. Where's the meaning? Where's the purpose? These lives of consumerism, slotting in, getting the house that you can't afford, getting the car that stretches your payments, having the 2 kids, it's fundamentally not a very meaningful life for a lot of people. And we know that because of how many people are on psychoactive drugs to just manage, all these things. So good news on that is that the problems always contain the solutions. So the energy in this story is that we have been sort of shoehorning ourselves into lives for many people that become lives of quiet desperation, and we can do better than that. And people want to do better than that, right? And this is sort of an age-old problem. We're getting very philosophical, but I believe this is the core of it. Ben Franklin said of his era, most people die at the age of 25. They're just not buried till they're 75, right? Meaning they stopped growing, they stopped yearning, they stopped achieving, they stopped, expanding. That comes exploring. It's not an adventure if it doesn't involve real danger. Everything else is a simulacra of an adventure, right? So that's what people want. Young men want to be challenged. We love being pushed to our edges, even if we don't always show it. We need to know where our edges are. And women have their own entirely different construct around how they grow and develop, and we want to develop and grow. That's what people want. That is the human experience. And when I say death cult, they fundamentally don't want that. Too happy, pill for that. Too sad, pill for that. On and on and on. Everything's about just crushing us down so that we're good little consumers, and we bought it. That's our framing metaphor. Our whole lives get organized around that. And then it's a huge ask to ask somebody to let go of all of that, let go of that shore and get swept along in this new direction. That's a big ask. But increasingly, people are getting there because that's the offer on the table.
I don't think they have a choice. I don't think they have a choice. I think the thing about the destruction of our currencies and our sovereign debt is that, and what people are feeling it, because every time I've been in a cab or an Uber in the last month, I ask them, what are people talking about? And it's always inflation and how hard it is to make ends meet. And I realized in 2006, I was setting up a practice, and I set a very small payment for people in this little private hospital in 2006. And I noticed, and then it never increased. And the surgeon was still expecting this tiny co-payment 10 years later, 15 years later. And when I compared it to the amount of gold I could buy in 2006 for that co-pay to, say, 2019, I'd have had to more than triple my out of pocket, and no one could afford it. So I found I was on a good income, but even I was struggling. I think the game is so rigged now that if you play the game, it's almost impossible to make headway. It's a bit like in that movie War Games with from the 80s, where they say the only solution, the AI says, is not to play. You have to leave that game and start a new game, and I think and in a sense you have done that, and you're living it, you're manifesting it. You've got honey badger, you've got real wealth, as in you've got land and food growing on it, and energy and water, and that's the real wealth, and community, and nourishing the spirit. These are all things that make life meaningful, and that's what we're trying to build here. It's not, people are still caught in the old game, and it breaks my heart because they can't. It's like they're walking on one of those moving walkways where it's going against them. It's gone from advancing you to your destination to you have to walk ever faster and faster just to stay in the same place, just not to go backwards. And I think people will, just because if to the extent that's true and people are seeing it, they call it the cost of living and inflation. But I think that will drive people to these new ways of living.
I think too, Doctor, when you said about philosophy, I do believe the facts aren't working anymore. The facts are like squash balls bouncing off their heads. But I think philosophy is what we have to talk about. Philosophy started the hippie movement in a period where, it was the 1950s versus the hippies, and people still wear hippie paraphernalia, the clothes and stuff. That's the profound effect it had. But when you come to talking about a cult, because we get attacked with that a lot, I've been saying to people, the way to identify a cult is, can you ask questions? If you can't ask questions, you're in a cult. If you can ask questions, you're not in a cult. And that's the evidence that we're not in a cult. But I do believe what you're saying, like when you said about the pyramids, people were motivated by the pyramids. We've always told it was built by slaves, but it was built with such perfection. Those slaves still had a pride in their work. I actually think if it really was built by men, that they were working together for some greater cause, and they were motivated to make it as best they could. And I think you're right. I think this is, if they've done it all through history, we have to do it. We have to somehow motivate men to realize you are not a powerless serf that's come here just to disappear in the crowd and vanish without any recognition that you're even here. You're a person of great significance, and people who are not even born yet will not even maybe know your name, but they could be born in a free, better society because of the great sacrifices you made in your time. And that offers your soul great worth. It might not have the money, you might not have the big flashy car, but you can walk into whatever's waiting for us after this life with your head held high, that you fought the great fight for what is good about humanity. And that's where I think you're so spot on about getting the metaphors right. And it's like a marketing war. COVID-19 was marketing genius. It was basically the Pearl Harbor of attack on the world, but from a vaccine perspective. But monkeypox, when they tried it again, we meaned it out of existence. We won back with our own marketing. And you see it now, the marketing. And that's why the other great thing about Australia now to do with that is they're getting ready we won't be able to post this in a few months. They're getting ready to silence us on the net. The only things that can actually go on social media or anything now will be government approved things. So we're not going to be able to survive like this. So if we do a recording like this on Zoom, it'll probably be handed around on small USBs and spread throughout the community. So we're looking for ways to get past it. But that's where we are. That's the world where we're in. Our leaders now have basically convinced themselves that the right thing to do is to silence anyone in the community that disagrees with them. It's horrific.
Well, that's how you know it's a cult,
ideology.
because
right,
they're not allowing anybody to ask the questions. Like if you really have an honest and well thought through point of view, you welcome challenges, you welcome questions, because you can always get things a little bit sharper. You can always learn a little bit more, right? But they're trying to shut it all down because they're afraid of the question. So when it gets down to this, I ended all of my talks during COVID with, we'll plant a garden, but there was this tagline I threw out there, which was, it didn't have to be this way. And the reason I did that is because it invites a question, right? Immediately, if I say it didn't have to be this way, you're like, well, which way should it have been, right? And I studied cults enough to understand that the way you go about deprogramming somebody from a cult is that you do not put a bag over their head and waterboard them in the desert till they, think better. You have to allow the internal inconsistency of that cult to rattle around in their own head. And the way you do that is you ask the question that can't be answered, right? Hey, why are we burning all these young girls for being witches, right? Eventually, like, people just don't have a good answer for that one, right? Or you say, hey, you took a vow of poverty and and celibacy. Why is the guru driving off in a Rolls Royce with your girlfriend? You ask the question that just can't be answered, and the COVIDians, the COVID people, they have nothing logical. It's a complete mess. It's a total hot mess, right? Hey, you have to get your 6-month-olds on up vaccinated for this thing, which they have a 99.997% chance of surviving, no, we can't talk about the risks, and you can't ask any of that stuff. And no, you can't talk about early treatments. No, you can't ask questions. Like, they're getting really inconsistent, but your vaccine lack of uptake for boosters 4 and 5, or whatever the numbers are now, that shows that already they've lost control of the narrative. So you know how they operate when they start to, when the guru of the COVID or whatever the cult is starts to lose control, they double down, they triple down, right? They are going to become more aggressive and authoritarian, and people have to understand what's at stake here, right? And I'm just in charge of my own little region of my country, and you got yours, but we're both facing the same battle, which is, I'm dead. Do not fight this now. And it feels awkward and uncomfortable, and I might lose my YouTube channel, and I'll face some stuff, or might lose my job, whatever. But those are small compared to what's going to happen when my children are drafted into a resource war to go die on some sandy shore somewhere, or, my entire currency system collapses, and, the billionaires have all skated away with, off to their islands, whatever it is. We face, like, this could get really dark. And the only way it doesn't end in mass atrocities, according to history, is we have to veer this off. We have to get this going in a different direction. And so what do? Education. People need context. They need the data, but we have to frame it really elegantly and really well. We have to understand and study what we're up against, because they're very good at what they do. And they use comprehensive sation level fear programming. If you don't get this, you're going to kill grandma. Think of the shame, right? They just, they give you all that junk, and it works for a while, but it doesn't work forever. And so what we have on our side is truth, right? We've got people of integrity, which shines like a beacon. Courage is also contagious, right? So these are the parts we have to assemble, and we have to be very careful that we don't accidentally fall for their traps, and there will be many. They will send in agents provocateurs. They will try and sow division. They will come after us individually because they're kind of weak little bastards that way, etc. But we got to really understand, I think, what we're up against. COVID hopefully revealed that for enough people that we have critical mass to go, this is really big. And it's more than COVID, right? COVID just, I think, exposed it and maybe accelerated a bit, but it didn't create what you're seeing. COVID didn't create Dan Andrews. He was already there.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Already in place.
Yeah, when they came after me, Chris, in 2021, I believe I was the first doctor in Australia to be suspended for talking about the FLCCC message. But I didn't. I felt it was such a great honor. I didn't see it so much as an attack. My framing was, I'm going to have some fun here, because I believe they were wrong. I believe that they were doing something that was evil, and I saw it as my job to put it on the public record, to get it out there, so that they couldn't turn around, as I knew they would in a year or two or three's time, and say, we didn't know. We didn't know. No, the reason for putting it on the record, my plan was to put them on notice, because I know at some point, I believed in some point in the future, if I wasn't crazy, and if the facts showed it, accountability was coming. It wasn't my job to produce the accountability. I just saw myself as and I considered it an honor, And when I took the medical council to the Supreme Court in New South Wales, I found myself making. If you told me a year before that I would be making these arguments without a lawyer in the Supreme Court, I would have said you're absolutely nuts. If you said I would be doing these podcasts, no, forget it. I mean, it's not me. But such are the times that we find that we have we do what we have to do to save lives, to try and veer us off the edge of this cliff that we're careening to. And I think we're just we're another out branch of the remnant. And yes, maybe we're talking to ourselves at this stage, but I felt very alone in 2021. But now I see a global movement, and we're kicking ass. We're engaged against this enemy, and we've I feel like we've hit the beaches of Normandy. Yeah, we're still under fire, and the enemy is still strong, but we're advancing. We're advancing. We're advancing in the minds and hearts of the people around the globe, and it's beautiful. It's terrible, but it's not without hope. And people definitely need to come to peakprosperity.com and look at the crash course, look at these materials, join the different freedom communities, because they will find so many people of like mind. And that was one of the things in the last few years, that people felt so alone. They felt, I'm the only one thinking this. And one thing, when we were in Canberra, when the truckers happened in Canada, the convoy, I was driving back from northern New South Wales, and I saw the bridges and people with the Canadian flags and the truckers and the freedom convoy. It all happened spontaneously. There was no organization. It was just people. It was like they smelled something, like, and so we have to be in Canberra. And then the whole thing about, seeing hundreds of thousands of Australians spontaneously appear and form a city. We literally created a city in Epic Park in Canberra, of a true example of anarchy. We fed, we looked after everyone, and there was so much joy. And the part of the joy was we realized we're not alone. We were told we were just nutters, individuals that had no idea. And it was like there was a constant, it was like being in Woodstock. We knew we were living through history. And we're continuing to live through history. And these are still the echoes of those gatherings and stuff, that we realized, well, we're not alone. And it's the ripples are spreading around the globe, and it's beautiful.
Can I bring up one thing?
There's so much to be hopeful about. If I just
one thing,
one
Doctor?
second.
Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was
just
going to say, in the hope column, I'll carry on then. In the hope column, like again, with no organizing, Bud Light got crushed as a brand here in the United States, right? With no organizing, Disney movies are flopping badly as they run them through their woke committees of awfulness, right? With no advertising, right? Oliver, this young kid, Oliver, he sings his heart out, and it catches on despite us being told by the media it's awful, right? So to your point, Paul, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled, they say, is convincing us he didn't exist, right? It's from The Usual Suspects. I got that line. But the greatest trick the social media companies pull on us is making us think we're alone, and we're not. And so the great thing about COVID, besides learning about vitamin D, was I got to figure out who the moral giants were and who the intellectual frauds were. It just burned it all down, right? And by the way, as I say waggishly, COVID killed a lot of my heroes, just none of them died from the disease,
Yeah, that's a great comment. Oh my God, me too. Wow, what a comment.
Yeah.
What a comment.
What happened to Noam Chomsky? Oh my gosh, right? I thought the guy really was on something. I read a bunch of his books. Arnie, screw your freedom. Screw your freedom.
Can I bring up one thing though, just about myths?
Yeah.
Just about myths.
Yeah.
And these are only things I've discovered on the road. There's two things. There's a big thing about freedom. The freedom movement over here is saying we shouldn't use the word freedom. It's compromised. And I'm sort of going, well, we're a freedom movement. We're not going to use it. Who's going to use it? And I think freedom of speech is more than a right. It's a weapon. It's a weapon to stave off this darkness that's coming. That's why they want to disarm us. But the other thing I've discovered, and I could be wrong, But I think there's freedoms that can be enshrined, which is like freedom of choice and freedom of speech, and they can be enshrined in a constitution. And what we do is we can offer our children, say, if you exploit those two freedoms to their utmost, they give birth to a third freedom which can't be enshrined, and that's the freedom to discover who you are and bring the best version of you to the community, and then we all benefit by your presence. You are an absolute individual, and these two freedoms are the parents of you discovering yourself. And to me, offering that gift to the next generation and generations that I'll never meet is an ideal worth dying for. And I think this is like getting men up, not only say, especially aimed at men. We're in a time now where it's not finding something worth not complying for or not fighting for, but seriously, you're prepared to put everything on the line because it's worth more than me. And it doesn't mean about the accolades or anything or shrines or anything. It's just I did what was right for the human spirit, and the human spirit's yet to come. And that's why I think America is so important, because it looked like you were going to fall, but at some point now, it's with Oliver Anthony and this, it's like, no, you guys are still strong. You fought for your freedom once. You know what it is. I know we're over here. It's just mass compliance at the moment. It's a bigger fight over here. So yeah. Anyway, I'm just ranting now, but that's meeting someone like you from still the strong bastion of freedom is very, very important. And I hope this spreads with our audiences to just get people talking and discussing, you know? Yeah.
Well, that freedom of speech then, that actually has a thing built under it, which first you have to have freedom of thought. Because what good is the words coming out of your mouth if you don't have free thought, right? Excellent. And that's the ultimate crime here. They're trying to control our thoughts, right? And they do this with the programming that they do, and they implant this, and they're doing the nudge units. Australia's got a very fine nudge unit. They're implanting all these ideas. And I watched this whole thing that just happened, with Hamas and Israel. And there's just this incredible wall of emotional, like, just programming that's happening, right? They're working very hard to intrude into people's thought space, not because they really want you upset and outraged. It's because when you're in that state, you are more suggestible towards other things and ideas. And so I'm very much on edge when we have these big sort of like outbursts. But if I think in my country, if I had a complaint that I could resolve, it's that I'm really tired of being marketed fear and ignorance. Those two things, heavy duty products, we're marketing fear and ignorance to ourselves, and those have a cost. And the cost is it starts to shape your thinking. So it doesn't even matter what words come out of your mouth. If your brain is already occupied, it doesn't matter. So that's the actual war. It's for your thoughts. And so why does it matter? Because everything that we hold dear, looking at this beautiful bus behind you and all these technologies, and we're kind of hoping that we're going to find a solution to the insects and maybe we'll travel to the stars. We don't get any of that if the next generations don't have creative freedom of thought as part of their core programming. That's what's at risk here. We're just ready to it's that death cult. We're going to stop advancing,
So they're really after that.
Yeah. I feel like the West has been attacked. You talked about the 10 things, the WF, you'll own nothing, Western values will be challenged. I feel like in some ways the West may have already it's the losses are already baked in the cake. We're being run by evil clowns who are going to crash the whole show, and they appear to have that in mind, and it's going to make life tough for all of us. But I think there's been so many mistakes made, one after the other. It's not a random thing. It has to be part of a plan. And if you look at what is the outcome of that plan, we're going to be poor. Look at poor Germany. Germany is in the process of being deindustrialized. energy is still front and center in my thinking, and we're not been creative about our solutions, because I believe there are solutions like the electric car thing. I think Elon Musk. I was passionate about ecological design 20 years ago. I put all sorts of effort into how do you build houses in the city that will heat and cool themselves, water and all that. So I've been thinking about this stuff for decades, and Elon's cars weigh tons. You know, you've got a company called Aptera that makes it out of carbon fiber. You can lift up the cockpit with your hands. It's so strong that you can hit it with a sledgehammer and it bounces off. And because it's so light, you can actually put solar panels. You can actually put you can actually put solar panels on it. I don't know how to stop. There you go. You can put solar panels on it, and it will give you 30 miles of range per day just from the sun. You don't even have to plug this car in. You can get 1,000 kilometers range, much smaller batteries. You can plug it into a normal power outlet, all that. So this is what I mean by design. We could do so much more. It's not just the energy, it's also the way we're wasting it. It's the lack of understanding of basic physics, that if you're driving around, you're moving just your X kilos with a couple of tons of metal, that you're going to have to use a whole lot more resources. But none of these solutions can emerge in this heavily regulated, straitjacketed mindset. You know, I don't know if
that gets back to at least, you know, part of our core framing narrative, right, which goes way back, which is be fruitful and multiply, right? That was a pretty decent tagline when there was like 3 million people on the planet, you know, or whatever the numbers were back then, you know. It's a different tagline today that we would have to organize around. And so you're right, there's a lot of things we could be doing. By the way, I see China doing a lot of them because they have a very different approach to this, and they get it, and they actually have very competent people in positions of power. They don't really do career politicians. To get to that level, you usually have a PhD in something, right? They have a lot of engineers and scientists, you know, in charge of key things like their energy policy and stuff like that. So they're busy making thorium reactors, and, you know, they understand what they need to do. And if you go to Beijing, you will see every flavor of those electric cars. We make Teslas are like these muscle cars. They're very sexy to drive in. Have you been in one? They're amazing, right? But they're literally race cars, right? The thrust and acceleration on those is astonishing, but you don't need that to go from here to there, right? And so China solved that. You go to Beijing now, there's little like electric scooters, trikes, small things, little box cars, bigger ones, for every part of the distribution chain. They have a different electric vehicle for that, which I can look at that and go, okay, I can see that there's a path there that makes sense. What you're raising, we still have a path around energy in Europe, the United States, Australia too, Canada, which is just brain dead. It's the story is, oh, we'll always have this much energy, so let's just keep doing this, right? When we could do simple things if we had a different narrative, right? You know, here's my dream. My dream is in 10 years, you wake up and there's the equivalent of sports radio where you got all these guys and they're just going at it, every statistic for whatever football or soccer or cricket, whatever they're doing, right? That level of passion, but talking about like, you know, how much energy their home used and how they found another way to maybe shave a few, you know, BTUs off of the equation or whatever, right? Like we should have that same passion about how we occupy this world. And I would love to see that, you know, but
I think
for
the 15
now,
minutes, I think the 15-minute cities are trying to condition us for a West that will have a lot less energy.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're preparing us all that energy resources, like you say. China's is building coal-fired power plants. So they're not straitjacketed by the idiocy of the Western zero carbon plan. So we're being preconditioned for this world now. But it's not the point I want to make. It wasn't just the energy. We're throwing so much of the energy we want to get from A to B. It's not about like you say. You don't need a muscle car to to do it. You want light, but you don't have to waste that energy making heat unnecessarily. We haven't really focused on the low-hanging fruit of energy efficiency, and we desperately need to do it because we're past peak energy, and that will equate to past peak prosperity, but we can modulate it. But we have to think differently. We have to get smart. We have to be efficient. We have to, I'm looking forward to those discussions. I think they're coming soon.
Well, I hope so. But part of the reason that I, this is in my home studio, but right out there is my cows and my chickens and my garden and, all that stuff that's going on here, because I don't think we're going to make that adjustment until we have to, right? As Churchill waggishly said about Americans, oh, you can always count on them to do the right thing after they've exhausted all the other options. And the problem with that is that, to Paul's point, like we are past we're going to have so much less energy. I'm really worried that we'll fight this next big world war because, Taiwan, whatever, and we're going to blow some stuff up. Well, it was kind of stimulative. After World War I, we rebuild. After World War II, we rebuild. So we'll just rebuild.
Are you frozen, Paul? Kelly,
Come off us. Keep going.
bloody Starlink. Can't trust the satellite. Who can you trust?
Yeah, the Ukrainians needed it. It was fun.
Yeah, that's right. That's all good. I did it. Thanks. Cheers.
Well, so I mean, but so when people ask, what is my top-down organizing thought here, is that the WEF, those guys and gals, they truly believe that the world is running short on resources. They understand that. They put out, it's all on their PowerPoints, right? They say, their main PowerPoint opens with this statement: by 2050, we're going to need 2 planets, right? We don't have 2 planets. So what do? Well, that's odd. So if we don't have 2 planets of resources, we only have 2 levers in this story. One of them is, fewer resources per person or fewer people. Those are your only 2 levers in that story, right? And so what do you do if that is your organizing thought? Now, if it was me in that position, I would say, time to fess up with people, explain the condition we're at, say it was lovely that we had these very high living standards with plastic stuff from, 30,000 miles away, and that was all fun and good, but that's coming to an end. Good news, we can refashion ourselves into lives with greater meaning and purpose, and this is what it might look like, and involve people in that process and be surprised when they do it better than you even imagined by your wonderful plan. But they're not doing that. They're coming at us from top down saying, this looks a little dodgy, so we're going to have to put cameras in all your cities, your 15-minute cities. We're going to have to give you a universal basic income. We're going to give you a digital ID and passport connected to your central bank digital currency so we can program what you can and can't do and buy and all of that. And by the way, or statements will ding you and social credit score, all that. That's the world they love that. They love that because they're kind of control freaks, My problem with that is, to back up, is that we live in a complex system. Our economy is complex. Our societies are complex. And here's the thing about complex systems. You can't control them. They have emergent behaviors. You can't say, I'll do this, I'll turn these 2 dials and get that. It doesn't work that way. So they're going to squeeze on this whole thing, and I think they might break it. That's what I'm worried about. I might be wrong, but I'm not confused. I'm pretty sure they don't know what they're doing because they've been in their little yes, ma'am, yes, sir bubble chambers for so long. Nobody effectively gives them a counterbalance to their thinking. So I think they believe what they believe, which is they can control this whole thing.
So they want to move to the new world, but they don't want to give up the keys to the kingdom. They want to be in charge of the new world as well as the old one. And hubris is their weak point.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's the danger point for all of us listening to this, talking about this. That's why becoming resilient and understanding, like, okay, I'll play the game while it's running, but this is a game of musical chairs potentially, and I better know which seat I'm going towards, if it stops, right?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? There's the other really staggering thing, especially from Australia, which I just struggle to understand, is that the country has been violated by these people. The ones who were forced to take this vaccine against their will, violated. The ones who didn't, like Paul, who were basically had their lives destroyed, violated. Everyone's been violated, and yet there's no outrage against against this. There is some with a small community, but the rest walking around like, oh well, let's move on, and thinking, wait, man. Your children might not be able to give birth because you took them to get vaccinated, and their fertility might be screwed up. There's all these really significant issues, and I see someone like Jordan Peterson and Peter McCullough talking about this. There's a lack of outrage, which is baffling. I don't understand that at all. I wonder if you have any ideas about that.
Well, it stretches back to the idea that this wasn't the first sort of insult that had happened. This is why people like Paul and yourself are so remarkable, because there's a few people out there that are built in a way that says, out of everything, I value my integrity more than anything. Like, that's not for sale. But we understand something deep down, which is that once you cough up that first piece of integrity, the second, third, fourth, and fifth come along much, much easier. The first one you have to stop, right? And so when we peel this back, I was not anti-vaxxer. I still don't consider myself anti-vaxxer, but boy, am I a skeptic now. And once I peeled back all the research and read this book, Turtles All the Way Down, and looked at the core primary research, and I have questions. And it's pretty obvious to me right now that what's happened is the whole thing, the whole vax narrative, the whole thing from beginning to end is at least in part designed to make people chronically ill so they can be sold more products. That's what happened, right? Because I'm of an age, I think we got like 3. We got the smallpox, polio, and maybe mumps. I don't know. No, I had mumps as a kid. It was a thing, but it wasn't that big a thing, right? Whatever. We had just a few. Now people it's like 78 jabs. 78, right? So once you've already got people to like cough up their children's health, well, and they're bought into that system, or I don't know what education's like down there, but up here it inarguably turns out an inferior product. It does not teach people how to think. It teaches people what to think. That's not correct. Education.
Same here. Yeah, we're hearing those stories. I'm going to have to go, and I hate to wrap this up because it's a fantastic conversation, and it's been great having you on. So we really welcome your time, but I'm going to have to end this now. I think my mum's ill. So thanks for coming on. Oh, that's life. But thanks for coming on. And maybe we could get back to this again, because Paul is just like, he's your number one fan. I'm pretty sure his room is just covered in pictures of you. You and Gert van der Bosch. She's like poster boys.
Well, thank you both. And yes, Paul is very familiar with my work, I could tell. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful to make connection with you both. So be well, and I hope your mom's well. And we'll do this again sometime.
I'd love to do that. Yeah, I think we both would. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for a lot of food for thought. It's really good as we move forward. Some of the things you suggest are amazing. So thank you so much.
Well, you're the playwright. We're counting on you, right? Metaphors. Yeah. Give us the new story, buddy.
I think it's true.
8:32, Chris.
Just going to see. Yeah, 8:32. That's what we've been saying. So just and